Today we're playing Evasives. If you hate Ruby Amethyst, or you're on a budget, this is the deck for you. Using the keyword Evasive, we're going to go under our opponents to beat them down before they have time to respond. Our early game typically revolves around playing anything we can, where we can then transition into a mid-game evasive board our opponents just can't touch. Thankfully, most of our cards have free health, meaning we'll be able to withstand cards like Grab Your Sword, Teeth and Ambitions, and all the other 2 damage removals. For the later stages of the game, we have some forms of soft removal with Genie, who also has Evasive, and that should be enough for us to get that sweet victory. Dreamborn currently has this deck priced at $26, and for my European audience, Card Market currently has the deck valued at €25 with shipping included. That feels like an absolute no-brainer for anyone who's curious about getting into the game. Enchantress and Cheshire Cat are perfect at trading up, since Enchantress has free attack when it's challenged, meaning that most of the time, on these turns, it's going to trade itself. Same with Cheshire Cat, they have no choice but to banish the card that they challenged it with, meaning that we can keep the board nice and clear when we do make the transition to a fully evasive board. In set 1, this deck lacked any card draw, so it was kind of inconsistent that you were just kind of playing what you got on the top of your deck, but now we've got the Donald Duck, and this card allows us to draw a card at the start of the turn. Sure, our opponent can also draw a card at the start of their turn, but we just want to end the game as quickly as possible, so we just need as much gas as possible to get the game plan going. Mother Knows Best is a fantastic tempo tool. Because it's a song, we can sing it on turn 4 with our previously played 3-drop, and then go into a separate 4-drop. This means that ideally we'll have a 1-drop, a 2-drop, a 3-drop, and a 4-drop on the board, and we will be bouncing back our opponent's cards. Of course, we start with Cusco. Ward is still a great keyword. Questing for free is just fantastic with this deck, and when we combine it with LeFaux, we can ready Cusco every time we can play the LeFaux. And then the only cards that are going to get around Ward are basically these wide board clears like Grab Your Sword and Be Prepared, which the opponent is definitely not going to have enough for to deal with multiple Cuscos. As previously mentioned, Genie is going to be our closer for this deck. Bouncing a card back and also having Evasive and Questing for 2 is really strong. This deck is perfect for beginners in the way that the Mulligan is so simple, and the Mulligan is how you win most of your games with this deck. Typically, we're going to hard mulligan for a turn 1 play, a turn 2 play, and a turn 3 play, and then anything extra we can just have as ink. This is the full deck list. There'll be a link in the description. Give it a go, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, Ruby Amethyst. So, typically against Ruby Amethyst, we have a pretty good matchup. Typically for the mulligan as well, you want to look for a turn 1, 2, and 3 plays. So we've got Flynn, Enchantress, and Minnie. It's probably the best turn 3. I guess goes for the evasive mid game straight away. Go turn 4 Tinkerbell, turn 5 Ray as well. So I'm going to keep these other cards just for ink, because we don't want to mess up our game plan by having uninkables. So Enchantress is probably the weakest card in my hand that I don't want to use, so I'm going to get rid of that. Go Flynn, and then yeah, this deck's quite budget, and there's a lot of new players right now because the tier Beastie 1K just happened and broke some insane records on Twitch, like 760 viewers I think it was at one point. So that was really good. We don't have any card draw actually, so the Donald Duck is quite a good top deck, but I'm going to get rid of it just to stick to our game plan. Actually, maybe I'll get rid of the cat. Yeah, I'll get rid of the cat here. And then quest, then we can go for the Enchantress. Enchantress trades quite nicely into the Snake as well. And even the 1-drops these days have free health, so they're going to get around Teeth and Ambitions, and if you're against Steel, it's going to get around Grab Your Swords, and then typically they're not going to be wanting to spend Smash on a 1 cost, so that's pretty good. But Ruby Amethyst is the most popular deck right now. I think there were 7 of them in the top 8. And Evasives does have historically a good matchup against Ruby Amethyst, just because they can't really deal with the evasive keywords. They do play like the evasive Mini, but it only has 1 attack, so you know, it's not going to trade really very well at all. So we can quest with the Enchantress, we can quest with the Flynn. I'm going to, just because we want to get to 20 as soon as possible. So it's going to waste 2 attacks, whereas if I just quest with Enchantress, right, it will trade, but the Flynn is still just going to die to like anything else. So I'm pretty happy with our board state currently. Typically you want to have just, there aren't really any evasive 1-drops or 2-drops, so you're just going to go for like solid questing cards that are just going to die pretty quickly, and then you can transition into a turn 3, 4, 5 evasives. And then against Ruby Amethyst, like I say, they have no way to really deal with it. They do have Teeth and Ambitions, it only does 2 damage. Some decks are playing Fidget now, which is a free 2 evasive, but even that is like, it's only really going to get rid of like some things. So yeah, here's the Teeth and Ambition to get rid of the Enchantress. So it's going to trade Snake for both of those, which is fine. Like I say, typically I'm fine with these going down, because we can go for our evasives now. We still have this Mother Knows Best, which is a really good tempo tool. It's just going to bounce the card back, which is really good against like bounce, because they have to pay a card to play it. You bounce it back, they have to pay 2 more cards, right? So that's a good way to get around it. We still do play the good old set 1 Cusco. which is still good. We're playing LeFou as well, so you can go like Cusco, LeFou, and then there's not really many ways they can get around the Cusco that way. They have to use a Be Prepared on it, and you can just play another one, and then just they need to Be Prepared every turn. As you can see, Ruby Amethyst just isn't really doing much. Like, they played a snake, and they've like drawn a card, and they're still 3 turns away from Be Prepared, and by then, we should be at 17 like lore next turn, and then we just need to find a Cusco basically, and we win. So they're just gonna be drawing cards, fine by me. Not really much they can do at this point. And yeah, so if you want to beat Ruby Amethyst for like I think $26 is what Dreamborn has it as currently, then great. We do unfortunately find a genie here. I say unfortunately, but this is fine. We can just pass it, and then we can bounce whatever they play. And genie is just a fantastic finisher for this deck, because if they play something quite big, typically on turn 6 they will be, you can just bounce it back. Typically you don't want to bounce their like Tremaines or anything, which we see there. So we can just get rid of this Minnie Mouse. Minnie Mouse is a really good card, so I always think like, oh, it's stronger than the Tinkerbell, which it is, but on the board it's not. It's better because it costs free. It's my thought process. But yeah, so we can use Genie to bounce something. There's a concession. Quick and easy game 1 against Ruby Amethyst. Cool, so it looks like we're against Discard this game. I think we should have an okay matchup against Discard as well, just because we're typically not drawing many cards anyway, and we're just going to be playing whatever's the top of our deck, so this is fine for us to kind of just play whatever. We can probably get rid of the Flynn here. I'm going to be really greedy and look for a turn 4 play. I'm just going to get rid of this Flynn because I'm going to ink this LeFou. So we do find a Minnie, which is a fine turn 4 play as well. Typically your turn 4s are like Pongo or Tinkerbell, which is just the same as Minnie but with 2 attack, which is quite irrelevant with this deck. We are against Steel, which will be quite an interesting matchup. Like I say, everything does kind of have like free health these days, so they're going to be using Smash, but because we're going to be playing so many cards that they need to use Smash for, then they're going to need a lot of Smashes, and that's fine for us because, you know, we're playing lots of them, right? So we can probably get rid of this Donald as well. Yep, cool. So we can get rid of Donald here, and just go for our, you know, standard. This is the same as we did in the Ruby Amethyst match. We went for the 1/3/1 drop, and then the Enchantress. Flynn Rider is a great 2-drop as well, just because it discards a card from your opponent's hand. It slows them down a little bit more. And typically going for card with this deck is fine. But I think this deck is basically, in set 1 it was quite good because there weren't many answers for it, and people weren't necessarily playing Steel until people found like Amber Steel was pretty good. But even like the Tinkerbell was the main issue, right? But if you have a full evasive board, which is like my main thing I'm going to preface, if you're against Steel and you know they have the Shift Tinkerbell, make sure they can clear all of your non-evasive stuff, and then if you just have a full evasive board, the Tinkerbell can't attack, so it's just doing the initial like 1 damage, and then, you know, they can't attack, so they can't do the extra ping damage that they would want to do. But I will say that Steel is still pretty good against this deck for sure. But just make sure that you're going for like full evasive boards when they get to the like turn 6. And that's kind of how you win the matchup. But the deck does kind of play itself, which is why I kind of want to push this deck for more like newer players. If you're not sure about this game and you think that you might like enjoy it, then pick up Evasives. It's a cheap deck. It beats the best decks in the meta currently, and it's a very simple way to learn the game. You learn a lot about how to mulligan with this deck, and you learn about what to ink. And I think mulligan is quite a underspoke about part of the game currently. People are asking a lot of questions about the mulligan, but typically for aggro decks, and especially this evasive deck, you just kind of want to plan out your first 3 turns, and making sure that you have enough ink to play those cards that you want to go in the first 3 turns. And then by the time you've played out those turns from your mulligan, you'll have new cards in hand, and then you kind of make some decisions. But because this is an aggro deck, you're typically just playing whatever you draw. But you don't want to go more than 6 ink with this deck, is the only thing I would say. But other than that, if you're new, just pick up this deck. It's been, like I say, $26 is very cheap for a deck that can beat a lot of the meta. So our opponent's playing discard, so what they're going to do is be discarding everything from our hand. But here we can just ink this, and now we're just going to go like Ray, Cusco, Genie, and we're pretty solid from there. They can't really do much. They can play smashes, sure, but we have got 3 targets that need to be targeted here, and we're approaching the 20 quite quickly. If they can't clear out anything here, which I think because they're probably going to want to spend the ink to play a character to discard some cards, we're going to go to 16, and then from there we basically just win off of the Cusco alone, because Cusco's got ward, so it can't be smashed. what basically just your opponent can't choose characters except a challenge. And then here, I probably want to get rid of Genie here. Typically, Genie's a little bit better, but because we're approaching the 20 so quickly, Cusco's just good because it's like a guaranteed free. Unless they use like a double grab your sword, which if they have it, fair enough. Discard players aren't playing 4 of them, so having 2 grab your swords here is going to be like insane if they have that. But if they do have it, then they have it, sure. But I don't think they will. But yeah, so set 2 just gave us a lot of cards. Like every card on my board right now is evasive, and they've just played the Tinkerbell, which I was speaking about before. But every card on my board is also a set 2 card. So set 1 evasives was still strong, and it didn't have any of these tools. And I think like, okay, so they're going to discard the Cusco as well. This is fine. Like I say, I don't think they have a very good way to deal with the board. I think 1 grab your sword will clear us out now, but like I say, we're kind of at 16 already, and they're not really doing much. Just go Enchantress here. Just play it for sure. And then, yeah, opponent can't interact with our board currently because our Enchantress isn't exerted, and they have no way to do that, so the Tinkerbell isn't going to get much value. Again, Enchantress is another set 2 card, so this deck just got way better with set 2, but no one really played it. I think the deck kind of plays itself as well, so I think people don't really like that aspect. They like a lot of like control matchups and decision making and stuff. But if you're new to the game and you want to climb the ladder, like just pick this up and turn your cards sideways basically. It's a lot easier to play than Hyper Aggro. I would say that it's not as strong as Hyper Aggro, but it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot easier to play. And this is more just for the newer players. Or if you miss evasives like me, I love evasives. It was one of my favorite decks in set 1. Yeah, it's just a fun deck. It just does what it does. It's a really cool gimmick. There's a concession in game 2, and yeah. Okay, so we're against Sapphire Ruby, which should be Pawpsicles. Again, we should have another good matchup against Pawpsicles. They don't do much in the early game, and that's kind of where we establish our board and win the game. So we don't have a 1-drop here, so I'm going to get rid of this Cusco, LaFoe, and Donald. Could get rid of Ray, but we can keep the Ray for discard. And Marvino's Best doesn't really do anything for us. I guess we could probably bounce the Flavisham, but I feel like it just is a bit slow for this matchup. So I'm going to keep Ray just for ink, and then we can maybe go for turn 4 on it. We do find the 1-drop. So we can play, just with this hand alone, we can go like turn 1 Flynn, turn 2 Flynn, turn 3 Minnie, turn 4 Hans, turn 5 Ray, turn 6 Genie. So then we just basically have to ink our top deck, and we've played out the whole game, essentially, just off with the mulligan. So we can get rid of this Hans because we've got the second one here. Go Flynn, pass. So the opponent only really has one cost card, which I think is the Pawpsicle itself. So if they play that, that's kind of their best start. Or Develop Your Brain, I guess, which is going to draw them a card. It doesn't establish their board, which is great for us. We can go for this cat. The Pawpsicle matchup really struggle against evasive as well. So yeah, this deck right now is just very good into the meta, and I think it's very underplayed. I think because it's so cheap as well, I think a lot of people look at it and they're like, oh, this is like so cheap, it can't be good, right? But I think a lot of aggro decks in this game are, especially in Lorcana, are metacools. The game is very slow right now, but because the game is very slow, people build their decks for the control mirror. So the game gets slower and slower, and as soon as the game reaches a certain point of slowness is when aggro just starts taking over and winning, and then, you know, mid-range starts becoming good, and then control beats the mid-range, and then it just goes slower and slower until we, you know, go back to an aggro meta once again. But yeah, like I say, I literally am just inking my top deck and playing the cards that I got in the mulligan. So if you can mulligan correctly with this deck, you just win, right? Like what, we're on turn 4, and we're already at 9, and next turn we'll be questing for 8. So, you know, we'll be at 17 on turn 5, and then we can just go like Genie, Ray, we can Genie back wherever they play. And what have they done so far? They've drawn 2 cards of a Pawpsicle and played a Grammar, which is a 1/1. So nothing too threatening from the opponent, and we've just had an easy game just because we mulliganed correctly. We've literally been inking our top deck, playing whatever, and turning the cards sideways. You don't need to trade. There are like very, very niche scenarios where you are going to trade, but don't worry about that too much. But definitely think about it if you are new. Think about, can I trade here? Is it actually going to help me or not really? Once again, ink the top deck, play the card from the mulligan, turn my card sideways, and we're at 15. And what can the opponent do here? Nothing much. If they quest with this Winnie the Pooh ink card, then it will be at 7, so they can use the Be Prepared, but then I'll just go for a Genie. But yeah, so the only issue is Be Prepared, but that card costs 7. So that's kind of the card that you want to keep in mind. So maybe it was correct not to play Ray here, just because we would have had 6 quests on the board anyway. But the fact they're playing Let It Go tells me that they definitely do not have Be Prepared in hand. So I'm good to kind of just play whatever. I think, honestly, I'm just going to quest and pass this time. Because we don't want to do anything. There's the concession. Another quick win against another control deck. That's Evasives. If you're new, build it, let me know. Take it to your locals, very cheap, and you'll have a fantastic time against all these control decks. Most liked comment of the deck is what I'll play in the next video. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you all so much, and I'll see you in the next one.